This happened a couple years ago. I don't like talking about it much. It just never seemed like a big deal to me as a kid. But the older I get, the more I think about it, and the more it haunts me. It was New Year's Eve, 2011, and a couple of my friends and I were having a sleepover. My friend's neighborhood was relatively new, so there were still houses being built around them. We were going to stay up until midnight, but it was only 7 o'clock, and we wanted something to do in the meantime. One of my friends had the idea of going to play hide and seek in one of the houses being built. We asked his mom if she was okay with it, and she gave us her phone to hold and told us to text my friend's dad in case anything happened. We took the phone, got our coats on, and headed outside. The house was about 100 yards away from the front porch, so it wasn't a far walk. We jogged across the street, and it was relatively windy out, and we really didn't want to stay out in the cold air. We decided to play in pairs, but if you're hiding, you had to stay with your teammate. I volunteered to be the seeker, so the two hiders headed into the house while me and the other seeker began to count. Once we hit 60, the game began. The house was dark and cold, and the only source of light was the bright moon shining through every window and door. We were standing in an empty shell of someone's home. No inner walls had been put up yet, and there was no carpeting on the floors. The only thing inside was a dozen thick wood beams. I told my friend I'll take the first floor, and he could take the second floor, and he agreed. He walked past me and up the steps. I was now alone. I walked around the first floor with a smile on my face, braver than ever. I called out the names of my friends, trying to hold in my laughter. Since the house was so dark, you could only see about 5 feet in front of you. So I made sure to check every nook and cranny. That's when I found the basement. It was a dark and eerie hole in the floor that looked like it would swallow anything that walked into it. They couldn't have gone down there. I thought to myself, there's no way. But I had checked the entire first floor and nothing from my friend upstairs. So I sucked it up and began to walk down the steps. I slowly walked down, taking careful steps because it was nearly impossible to see anything. My footsteps echoed through the dark room, and I was only able to see the tips of my fingers. I walked slowly, listening for any types of noise in the darkness. Then I heard something, the slow moving of feet. Hello? I said, followed by my friends' names. No response. For a quick second, I contemplated turning around, but I knew if this was them, they wouldn't say anything back. I called out their names again. No response. A smile came across my face. I had found them. Come on out, I said as I walked towards the source of the noise. I heard you guys move. I began to see a silhouette of something in the corner of the basement. It was a person, but only one. Didn't we say that all hiders had to stay together? I said to the person. They didn't move, just stayed crouched down in the corner, facing the wall. I began to walk closer, fully convinced that it was one of my friends. Hey, I found you. You're out, I said. At that moment, I just wanted to get out of the basement. I continued to walk closer. I still wasn't close enough to make out any body features. Whoever it was breathing rather loudly, loud enough for me to hear it from a couple feet away. Me being the naive kid I was, still thinking that it was one of my friends, just trying to scare me. I smiled. I didn't know what else to do, but I didn't want to take another step closer. That's when the breathing was overpowered by laughter and loud footsteps upstairs. I found you, I heard through the ceiling. Quickly turned around and ran back upstairs to see who was found, hoping that whoever was in the basement with me would follow. I waited on the first floor and I heard them coming downstairs. Got them both, my friend said as he came into my view. I stood there with a confused look on my face. How'd you get both of them? I thought to myself. But to my surprise, here comes both the hiders, walking from upstairs. My heart dropped. I felt the blood rush out of my face and my legs go weak. I slowly turned around and stumbled towards the front door without saying a word. Where are you going? They asked. I couldn't open my mouth to speak. There was only one thought going through my head at this time. Who was in the basement with me? I was only able to utter the words, "There's someone in the basement." As I made it to the front door, slowly turned the knob and slipped outside and began running back up to my friend's house. I wanted to get as far away from the house as possible. I began to feel tears welling up in my eyes. I made it to the front porch and collapsed, barely able to catch my breath because I was so hysterical. I laid there for what felt like ages when I heard my friends come up from behind me. I don't even remember what they were saying. All I could think about was the person in the basement. After I calmed down, I told them what happened, and they all seemed as freaked out as I was. The fact that I had talked directly to the person for so long is what scared me so much. We decided not to tell his parents about this, since we figured that they wouldn't believe us. I didn't sleep well for about a week after that, and I still have nightmares about it sometimes. A few months after that night, the house was finished, and the family moved in, and I never heard any complaints about a squatter or anything. So to the person in the basement, let's not meet again. I'm not much of a writer, but I wanted to share this, so if you had something similar going on, you don't feel crazy. I moved away from home about 2 years ago, but before then I was living in an old house with my family. I want to preface this with that no one believed me until there was evidence. But my family still lives in that house. It is right next to an old church that is abandoned, so it was pretty creepy when we first bought it. The washer and dryer were in the basement, so ultimately I couldn't avoid it like I really wanted to. It was always creepy, even when you were down there with someone else. Like eyes were burning into you. Odd things did happen from time to time. Food would disappear. Doors had been left open that we knew had been closed before. Clothes went missing as well. At times, footsteps were audible from the basement. So when I moved out, you can't imagine how happy I was. I need to tell you a little bit about the layout of the basement so this all makes sense. There is a garage door and a normal door right next to it. The washer and dryer were on the opposite side of the door for the garage. The stairs were right next to the doors, and there was a giant hole in one of the walls. My mom told me about what she had found in the hole about a month after I moved out. A pile of old clothes and cotton matted down as if someone had been sleeping on it. There were clothes there that had been missing, and empty food containers with broken markers used as utensils. But whoever it was grew ballsy and started taking forks, spoons, and actual plates. We figured that they were going through the garage door, since it had been broken. It did not lock. So to avoid this from happening again, my stepfather boarded up the garage door. Flash forward about 2 months' time. My mom was about to give birth to my little brother, who was 20 years younger than me. Anyway, I was laying on the couch watching TV. My stepfather had boarded up the garage door, like I said. I heard something like someone trying to yank the garage door open violently. At the time, I was not sure what was going on. So naturally, I was screaming because I didn't know what else to do. I called my stepfather. Then I called the police. And when they got there, they searched around the house but found nothing. The dryer was not on at the time, so it wasn't that. After that night, I haven't felt the same about the house. But we haven't had too much happen since. So to end the long story, person creeping around my mom's basement, let's never ever meet. I've just recently moved into a decent sized 2-bedroom house with a full basement, where a lot of my family's not so important belongings are still stored in boxes to be sorted through. Our house resides in a quiet neighborhood, but our elderly neighbors have advised us on some sketchy figures wandering about late at night, as there's a section of neighborhood 2 or so blocks away that houses those who have no place to go. Fast forward maybe 2 weeks, I had gone down to the basement to sift through my items and had noticed a few random things on our tables. A toolkit, binders, family pictures, etc. They had been opened and strewn about carelessly. Thinking another family member was sorting as well, I picked them up and went about my task. Over the following week, I would hear strange banging coming from the basement, sort of like our washing machine lid being shut. Now I'll admit I'm skittish My mind sometimes jumps to the worst possible outcome, so I became worried. At the time, I was the only person home, so I grabbed the pepper spray and went to go check. Stupidly, I might add. Our basement has 2 full rooms, plus 2 adjoining smaller rooms, one of which had a door that I had not opened myself. It is also barred by a beam of some sort, but the door stands slightly ajar. I assume it's just a small storage area. Upon turning on all the lights and cautiously looking around, I saw that a few more of our belongings and boxes that we hadn't unpacked yet had been opened and laid on the floor. What concerned me most was that the basement door that leads to the outside, on the side of our house, was unlocked. That is not something my family would forget about. Further inspecting the basement proved that there was no one inside, though I did not pry open the barred door. Telling my father about this, he said that the noises were probably the heater popping, and perhaps he forgot to lock the side door after taking out the trash. I'm not so convinced about his theory, but I really hope I'm not correct in thinking that someone may have found their way into our home and had been scavenging through our stuff in the basement. As I'm writing this, nothing has happened, but hearing people walk the streets shouting on some nights has me uneasy. I make sure that the doors are locked every night now. And on a free day, I will have my dad open that door in the basement to put my mind at rest.